Part 121. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1204. Aren't you going to the center of the secret realm? Gretel stood on tiptoes, looked over the elder's shoulder, and took a long look at the secret realm. The trees are withered and the rocks are scorched black. Just standing here, you can feel that there is almost no natural force inside, and there is no response from the plants at all. Even if there was, not long ago, the sun god had turned everything upside down, and the trouble was almost over. As for the animals and monsters, under the overwhelming pressure, all those who survived were able to escape. But there are layers of barriers in the elven secret realm, layer by layer of seals, intact, semi-damaged, and repaired after damage. Some were destroyed in the process of extinguishing the veins, and some were barely usable. There are also some that can be seen flickering from a distance, as if they may break at any time, or explode when touched. If I were an archaeological enthusiast of magical monuments, I would probably regard it as a treasure and spend 10 or 100 years in it without feeling bored. But Gretel? Okay, let's not go then. Gretel nodded sharply. He didn't want to delve into why the other party didn't let him go, so he nodded, turned around, and walked directly to the bunker. Speaking of which, he still has a lot of research he wants to do and a lot of experiments he wants to do using the high radiation environment here. If he was not allowed to go, he would seize the time to design the experimental plan. How could there be so much time wasted? It's a pity that senior brother didn't have the chance to go in together. Senior brother probably wanted to see what those elven ruins looked like. It would be better if he could study those magic relics in depth. But the danger inside is so great. If anyone explodes, it will explode with some strong radiation sources. Space-time barrier. The defensive magic you have researched can resist situations where the background radiation is relatively high, but it may not be able to resist small nuclear explosions. Gretel looked calm, but Elder Colin was a little uneasy. He stared at Greet's back for a few times, exchanged glances with the other three elders, and said loudly, "Why? How?" Gretel turned around. Elder Carrion walked forward with a smile and looked down at him. "Don't get me wrong, it's not because I treat you as an outsider that I won't let you in. It's just that the seals inside are very messy, and we are not completely sure that we can protect you. Once the inside is cleaned up." After saying this, he raised his head and glanced at everyone around Gretel. Finally, he looked at Archmage Baebo. "You and your friends can go in and visit at any time if you want. If you want to take something from it, dig some minerals, etc., as long as it doesn't go too far, that's up to you. You won't hollow out the veins, right?" "Thank you very much." Gretel gave him a big smile. Elder Carrion's eyebrows relaxed, and the wrinkles on his face relaxed one by one. He patted him on the shoulder. "It's a trivial matter. Not to mention that you are half-elf blood, but you are one of our own. Just saying that you have put so much effort into managing the secret realm, you won't be blocked from outside, right?" "One of your own?" Greet's eyes flickered, neither agreeing nor refuting. Archmage Baebo had been watching from the side, and now he came forward and said softly, "If he is not allowed in because of safety issues, then there is no need to worry. When I came here this time, the teacher specially asked me to bring some defensive equipment. With these equipment and me here, the safety of the junior brother can still be guaranteed." He said and raised his fingers to Greet. Greet understood, took out a bunch of equipment from the space bag, and placed them all in front of the elders. A dark black hooded cloak, shining like stars. A pendant that looks like a glass ball, rotates slightly, and you can see the colorful brilliance, turning into a small rainbow inside. A pair of high-top leather boots. The hard uppers are inlaid with 2 rows of gems. The magic brilliance ripples slightly, and it looks like it can be triggered at any time. Star cloak, iridescent ball, boots of firm defense. The elders came up, checked one by one, and exchanged glances with each other. Finally, Elder Fahim took off a cane, looped it around Gretel's wrist, and smiled lovingly. If you are really sure and want to come in, then come. Try to stay as close to me as possible. If anything happens, I can protect you at any time. After speaking, he glanced at Archmage Baebo, and then passed by Cyrilla, Bernard, and Appa in turn. Without anyone needing to remind him, Bernard put his arms around the silver moon deer's neck and took a step back. I won't go. If I go, I will cause trouble to the boss. I will wait outside in a safe place with Appa. Gretel, rightward arrow. Rightward arrow. I understand the truth, you are almost strangling Appa to death. Hold head high. Sure enough, although Appa also backed away obediently, he lowered his head and gave the barbarian a hard push, causing him to stagger. Don't worry, little Greet is with me. Unless it is absolutely necessary, the elders don't need to take action. Archmage Baebo smiled and took a step forward, standing side by side with Greet. After saying that, he glanced sideways at the silver dragon girl. Including Miss Sarah's safety, I can take care of it together. I have no problem. I can take care of myself. Cyrilla raised her head proudly. The team setting out for the next day was thus decided. Gretel was fully armed and walked in the middle of the team, close to Elder Fahim. Archmage Baebo prepared defensive spells and was ready to release them at any time. Elder Masray, who was responsible for the main protection, attached an extra circle of yellow light around Gretel. Even in front of Elder Colin, the big tree that might be regarded as a staff, a tree man? A branch was also extended above Gretel's head. If he looked bad, he could be wrapped up in 3 layers. To put it bluntly, it's not that I don't want to take him, but I want to have more confidence. For a low-level and important crispy skin like Greet, no matter what, you must make sure everything is safe. They advanced slowly within the secret realm of the elves. Archmage Baebo is responsible for measuring the surrounding radiation intensity, Elder Mapur is responsible for unlocking various seals and seal remnants along the way, and Elder Melancilla is responsible for constantly sowing seeds. Because the magical beasts inside the secret realm are almost extinct, the warriors who had transformed into wild beasts and were surrounding them for protection have also returned to their human form. They hold various amplification equipment, stand at various nodes of the purification circle, and join in the operation of the circle. Calling and pulling the natural force from the outside world, throwing them into the center of the secret realm and spreading them gently. Let the crystal mushrooms grow, reduce the amount of radiation around you, and let the weeds rise up and cover the ground. Moving forward step by step in this way, starting from the edge of the secret realm, walking through the wild fields and mineral veins. Walk into the forest city of the Elf King's Court, walk past the city walls that were once woven with tall trees and rattan, and walk past springs and ponds. Walking through the training grounds of warriors, walking past the library that once housed a huge collection of classics, walking past the academy where elven spellcasters studied magic, walking past the gardens where various rare plants were cultivated. The ancient tree of war once grew here, it was the most majestic and powerful giant tree, and the most reliable helper of the elves. When the ancient tree of war opened its branches and beat hard, there were no large-scale monsters, including Sci-fi. Woolly rhinos and giant elephants can attack head-on. Here grows a variant of the ancient tree of war, the ancient tree of explosion. It rarely moves and is usually rooted near the city wall. If there are enemies, throw the fruit out with force, and the fruit will explode when it hits the ground, shooting out thousands of once prismatic seeds. What grows here is the healing tree, its leaves and flowers have a tranquil and healing atmosphere. Ordinary ailments can be cured the next day as long as you sleep under the shade of the tree. The ancient tree of wisdom grows here, it is the wise man among the ancient trees. It often communicates with the elders, studies magic, and even teaches other ancient trees various skills. Elder Melancilla walked forward slowly, her eyes half opened and half closed, and the light green breath flowed gently along the skirt of her skirt. Sometimes she took a deep breath, as if feeling the remaining breath around her, and sometimes she pointed at the pits on the ground and softly explained to Gretel the stories of the past of these ancient trees. Greet kept nodding, imagining what these ancient trees looked like. Until he heard about the condition of the ancient tree of wisdom, he couldn't help but raise the oak staff and shake it vigorously. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? If you look at the ancient tree of wisdom, it can teach other ancient trees skills. If you are asked to learn dialysis, you won't even be able to learn it. Snapped. The oak staff quickly grew a branch, slapped Gretel on the forehead, and then quickly retracted. The movement was so quick and neat that it seemed that it had been planned for a long time. Around Gretel, the elders and other elves, as well as Archmage Baebo and Cyrilla, couldn't help but laugh softly. This little tree is so spiritual. Elder Melancilla also smiled for a while, stretched out his hand, and a green light point swayed and fell on the oak staff. She watched the light spot seep into the tree trunks, and then slowly continued. The world tree grows on the top of the highest mountain, its roots penetrate into the well of eternity. After being absorbed and filtered by it, the well water is accumulated in the tree hole. With just one sip, you can jump up without any obstacles. Level 1. There is also a world tree growing on Yangju Island now. But, alas. She sighed softly. The remaining branches and seeds of the world tree that were snatched from the explosion, and the ancient trees that were replanted, could not reach their original power level anyway. It takes 6 ancient trees to suppress the well of eternity, and it also requires the most spiritual elves to communicate and comfort them day and night. They kept moving forward, constantly unlocking the seals, constantly calling for the power of nature, comforting and purifying the secret realm, and recultivating its vitality. After 10 days of busy work, I finally walked up the hill where the well of eternity was. Beside the remaining huge pit, Elder Melancilla planted a fist-sized seed with his own hands. The 4 elders looked serious and chanted loudly. All the elves followed suit collectively. Greet looked left and right, not knowing what they were singing, so he had to meditate hard and follow them to mobilize the power of nature. The huge power gathered together to form a green whirlpool, roaring into the pit. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Until Greet felt that his legs were a little weak, and his whole body seemed to be hollowed out, there was a sudden rustling sound, and a fresh green shoot sprouted from the pit. It didn't grow very fast. In half an hour, it only grew about a foot tall. The trunk was green and shiny, and the whole tree looked like it was made of jade. At this moment, rain began to fall in the sky. All the elves raised their faces full of joy. The giant tree in front of Elder Carrion struggled to grow, and its crown was instantly covered with green leaves to welcome the rain. The garland on Elder Melancilla's wrists stretched hard, and huge shadows of flowers appeared in the sky, intertwined with rattan to form a network. And Udian jumped out of the array, stood in the open space, and tried to stretch his arms. The rain fell on him, and the expression on his face quickly changed from joy to pain, and then from pain to intoxication. "Elder," he said in a hoarse voice, "I may be about to advance." With a swipe sound, the eyes of Archmage Baebo, Cyrilla, Elder Fahim, and others all fell on Gretel. "Such a large gift from nature has come, Greet, why don't you advance? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @RedCometMars for the 4,000 starting coins reward. Thanks to @BookFriend 150431911431335 for the 100 starting coins reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1205. In the center of the purification circle, Gretel stood quietly, looking in the direction of Idion with a smile. The gifts of nature, the gifts of the world, are generous and abundant. Just like the rainwater, pouring down overwhelmingly, pouring on the leaves become green and full, pouring on the flowers, and the faint fragrance is revealed from the stamens. When poured on people, it heals old wounds, heals stubborn illnesses, and relieves serious illnesses. Strengthen the foundation and cultivate the youth, and even, maybe have a rejuvenating effect. Not only did Idion feel that his whole body was full of strength and self-esteem, he felt that he would be able to advance very quickly. Greet squinted at Elder Fahim. This elder's snow-white hair, was there some black at the roots? Not bad, pretty good, pretty good. Assuming that this elder can live 200 years in the future, then after collecting this wave of gifts from the world, at least 100, or even 200 years will be added to his lifespan. Of course, if it falls on a young and strong person, then these gifts of the worlds may work in other directions. Gretel looked at Idion, and then turned his attention to the senior brother. Archmage Baebo nodded slightly to him with a smile in his eyes. Gretel's eyes lit up and the corners of his eyes curled up. It seems that the senior brother also gained a lot of benefits during this operation. Although he was not able to advance to a higher level on the spot, judging from his expression, it was estimated that the advance progress bar might have gone from 30% to 50%, or even to 80%. Of course, here in Sarala, it may be because they did not contribute much in the natural process of purification, or it may be because they are basically soy sauce in the research process, so they did not get any benefits. But Gretel herself. Greet moved her wrists, her ankles, and her shoulders. The gifts of the world and nature are like drizzle, moistening things silently. He did feel a gain, he did feel refreshed, more flexible and alert, but compared with the power that rushes into the body like a torrent and forces one to advance, the gift from the world this time is still far behind. Advanced? I think it's still early for me. He raised his head and spread his palms to catch the rain from the sky. The giant tree above his head was rustling, and some branches were moved away, allowing the raindrops to fall on his face, hands, and the oak stick he was holding without any hindrance. I always feel that there is still a little bit left. No, there is still a lot left to go. I have been very busy during this period, running around, not studying anything, not researching anything. He was just busy doing business, tricking the sun god, and watching the sun god fight with others. Even if this wave of gifts from the world is collected enough and forcibly advanced, he will cry if the foundation is not stable, right? As soon as these words came out, the elven elders exchanged glances with each other and breathed a sigh of relief. Without enough study and research, without enough experience, if you rush to advance, there will be big problems later. Just like the spring water that world tree draws from the well of eternity, just one sip can allow people to advance without any obstacles. But the seemingly hassle-free approach is not completely cost-free. When it comes time to advance to legend, all the obstacles that have not been encountered before, the detours that have not been taken, the tears and blood that have not been shed will turn into thorns on the shortcut. And these thorns, densely packed and layered, will directly block the step leading to the legend into an abyss. Therefore, the elves have never dared to use the spring water of the world tree to create masters at will. Before they left the old continent, and when they moved out of the old continent and came to the fertile forest, their craziest attempt was just to condense the mineral veins, to create more well water, and to provide the elves with an environment closer to magic. After the Well of Eternity exploded and the elves moved to Eternal Meeting Island, only in the most difficult times did the elves step forward, drink from the spring water, and shoulder the responsibilities they must bear. Then what do you plan to study next? Elder Karen asked curiously. He stood by the dry waste pond, staring at the new green tree. The complete world tree, Its trunk can carry the entire Elf King's court, its canopy can block out the sky and the sun, and it can be seen at a glance from the edge of the forest. However, now, even with a lot of natural power poured into it, it has just grown to 1 foot. How high? To restore the elves to their former glory, it will require a large, and extremely large amount of energy supply, the careful care of countless high-level spellcasters and nature walkers, and an extremely long time. If you plan to study the growth of World Tree, then I sincerely invite you to join the team from now on. After all, it is easier to see the most essential changes in World Tree when you start observing it when it is young. It's a good subject. If a great mage from the change department were here, or a few elders from the natural god sect were here, they would definitely break their heads and grab it. However, Greet was not too interested in the subject. He smiled and shook his head. Elder Carrion didn't feel dissatisfied and stood aside with a smile. On the contrary, Archmage Baebo was concerned. Then what are you going to study next? Healing. Which 6th level spell? Or dash? He turned to the empty pool in front of him, his eyes filled with longing. It would be great if he could study this, he thought. It would be great if he could study the Well of Eternity, even if the junior brother only had a title and all other work was left to him, he would be willing to do it. This waste pool, with a diameter of no more than 3 meters, with steps converging inwards and an infinitely deep bottom, was leaning to one side, with the bottom exposed to the air. Obviously, when the sun god extinguished the flames of the mine, he lifted up the entire Well of Eternity. The ore veins below were churning to an unknown depth, and 5,000 tons of borax and 5,000 tons of lead poured down. Even now, the ground around the wellhead, the stone wall at the wellhead, and the huge deep pit next to it, where only 1 foot tall saplings grew, are still scattered with countless borax powder, broken lead blocks, and traces of borax being dissolved and then dried. The abandoned Well of Eternity, the stone walls are obscured by borax powder, dust, and moss. Even so, the thin and dense magic lines that remained on the wellhead still fascinated Archmage Baebo. While measuring the environmental radiation just now, he had already done a quick scan. However, if you want to erase the traces of those years and openly describe, test, and calculate, the elves are not so easy to talk to. Unless. Gretel also set his sights on the ruins of the Well of Eternity. He pondered for a while, cloud chambers, magnetic fields, bombarding atomic nuclei with neutrons, and various experiments passed through his mind. Finally, he shook his head regretfully. Knowing it but not knowing why is not necessarily a good path. Didn't the elves also blow up the Well of Eternity before? I still want to focus on the treatment direction. He pondered, slowly turned his head, and looked at the outskirts of the elf forest. When I came here before, I agreed that I was here to help look after Ms. Jasmine's father. Now, I have cured many elves, natives, and even monsters who got sick in the polluted area, but I can't cure her alone's father. Greet's voice slowly became lower, feeling a little annoyed. I hope that I can take some mineral veins, slowly conduct experiments, and find a way to treat patients. There was silence for a while at the edge of the Well of Eternity. Elders Karen, Elder Masray, Elder Melansala who focuses on nature, life, and plants, and the new elves all had regretful and sympathetic looks on their faces. They had more or less interacted with the compatriot who broke into the secret realm of the elves, was seriously injured, and was still sleeping in the ancient tree. Even now that the secret realm has been cleared, they can stand safely on the edge of the Well of Eternity. Those compatriots who have sacrificed their lives for this, and those compatriots who are still enduring pain for this, no one can feel good when thinking of them. You can take as much of the mineral veins here as you want, Elder Colin replied without hesitation. Including vein burning and explosion situations, if you need, we can also try our best to help you simulate it. Of course, the most important thing is to ensure your own safety. When the affairs of the secret realm are finished and the seal is repaired, we will go and see that compatriot, Elder Melancilla added softly. With so many people working together, we can always come up with something. Even if it requires powerful healing power, 4 legends working together is always better than 1 legend. Little Gretel, apart from the mineral veins, what other research conditions do you need? Elder Mapley looked around and frowned slightly. This was once the seat of the Elf King's court, where the most splendid magical civilization once bloomed, and where the largest research institute was established, where thousands of spellcasters studied diligently. However, the old buildings, the old magic equipment, the old books, everything, were almost destroyed in that explosion. Some people tried their best to grab some, and most of them were copied as much as possible from memory after moving to Yangju Island. It doesn't matter what you need here, little Gretel, what equipment and materials do you need to study healing techniques? Otherwise, why not go to Eternal Meeting Island to study it? There is also a small-scale well of eternity there, and the relevant research conditions are better than here. Much better. The air beside the pool suddenly solidified. On the top of the mountain, the hot and humid wind was wrapped in rain and blew past everyone, but it could not blow away Greet's brow. Even the oak stick he held in his hand stopped shaking the green leaves and neatly formed a stick. The little snake that was coiled around the staff and kept swimming, catching rainwater up and down, retracted into the inside of the staff with a swish and disappeared. I don't want to go to Yangju Island for the time being, Greet said slowly. I have my own research rhythm. I don't want to go anywhere until the research results are obtained. Besides, the research conditions I need now can be provided in the forest for the time being. But Gretel, don't you want to go to Eternal Judgment Island to see it? Elder Melancilla took half a step forward, and her voice suddenly became urgent. In any case, you also have the blood of elves flowing in your body. Don't you want to see where your mother lives? She stopped suddenly. The expression on Gretel's face suddenly turned blank. Looking at the seedlings of the world tree, his voice was empty. If she loves me, and if the elves can really accept me, why hasn't any elf come to confirm whether I am dead or alive all these years? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1206. When Greet said these words, the atmosphere at the edge of the well of eternity suddenly stiffened. Elder Fahim stopped smiling and looked at Gretel worriedly. Idian paused his attempts at strength, and Ashu Isong turned around from the outside of the crowd and walked quickly towards Gretel. Archmage Baebo didn't make any move, he just darkened his face, and his eyes lightly touched Elder Melancilla. He took a step across and stood half sideways in front of Gretel, staring at the elves without saying a word. The one who moved the most was Cyrilla. Without thinking, the silver dragon girl took a step across and took the initiative to hold Gretel's hand. The silver dragon girl's face clearly showed sympathy and worry. Gretel. I'm fine. Gretel's expression softened a little. He gently swung his arm to break away from Cyrilla's hand, and patted the back of her white and delicate hand. The voice was soft, and he even managed to squeeze out a smile. I'm really fine. Cyrilla held his hand firmly again. The silver dragon girl's usually cold palms were now warm and wrapped around his fingers. After letting it warm for a while, slide it up again and place your palm against his palm. Soon, the other hand came closer, as if trying to transfer body heat to his body and dispel the infinite chill in his heart. Greet actually smiled. He put his hands together, patted the back of Cyrilla's hand again, and said in a soft voice. Don't worry. I'm really fine. It's in the past, a long, Long time in the past. To be fair, Gretel, Wujo to be precise, has no grudge against the elves. He is not the child who lost his mother when he was young and grew up with his father. It's not like that kid who eats food from hundreds of families, wears clothes from hundreds of families, and is surrounded by ladies and aunties who help with laundry, mending clothes, and taking care of their daily lives. It's not that kid who lost his father before he was 10 years old, was raised by his father's comrades, and joined the city guard at the age of 16. However, if he hadn't traveled through time, what would have been the original little Gretel's life trajectory? He joined the city guards at the age of 16. Relying on the inheritance left by his father, if he is talented, lucky, and diligent, he may be able to become a level 3 or level 4 warrior in his early 20s. As for passing the level 5 mark and becoming a knight, maybe it can be done, but maybe it won't be possible in a lifetime. Of course, if the talent is not good enough and the luck is not enough. In fact, when Wujo traveled through time, the original little Gretel was already dead. Say something about thinking of you and loving you. He said that he regards you as one of the elves, and that he has the blood of the elves in his body. What do you mean? As long as you reach level 10, you can light up the pendant and find the way to Evergem Island. If I never reach level 10 in my life, does that mean that I have no value to the elves, that I am not worthy of going to Evermeet Island, or even of seeing any elves? In a place like Heartland City, a small town with only 20,000 people, where the highest level knights and spellcasters are no more than level 10, it is so difficult to think of reaching level 10. Gretel did not resent these elves, nor did he resent his original mother in any case. The elf woman gave birth to the child named Gretel Nordmark. However, he really felt a little aggrieved for the former child named Little Gretel. Why, I have been indifferent for the past 10 years, and never showed up when my children needed it. Now I see the child growing up, becoming an adult, becoming a level 12 nature priest, a level 12 mage, and doing things that the elves would be amazed. Then he came over and said, "You have our blood flowing on your body. You are one of our own. We invite you to visit Elf Island." He. The elven elders exchanged glances with each other quickly. Behind them, the elves who had not yet reached the legend, including Ashui Song, Idian, and others, held their breath and did not dare to say a word. After a while, Elder Melancilla coughed lightly. "Hey, Greet, things may not be what you imagine. If you don't have to, you will leave your young child without a mother." "So what?" Greet said softly. "Break up the couple, take the mother away from the young child, and leave no backup for the child. Yes, the mother may indeed have her responsibilities to bear, but has anyone thought about that child?" Elder Melancilla choked. Gretel spoke in one breath. "No one has ever thought about, what if something happens to the child's father? What if the child's father fails to protect the child? What if, the child's father remarries, and the child needs to make a living under his stepmother? Woolen cloth. Ahem, Greet, you don't understand the history of the elves? There are some things you don't know." Elder Fahim had to speak. Early on, when the elves retreated, they took away many human partners and their children from the mainland. However, because of the natural lifespan gap between humans and elves, as well as the difference in qualifications, many tragedies happened. Gretel remained silent, staring into his eyes, waiting for him to continue. Elder Fahim sighed. "Neither the northern part of the New World nor the large forests here are places where lower-level professionals can live happily. Even if we try our best to take care of them, they have a very bad life." Later. He sighed again, as if he wanted to spit out all the tragedies he had seen along with the breath in his lungs. Later, it gradually became a convention that elves and humans combine to live in the human realm as much as possible. Especially partners and children with lower professional levels should not be brought to Yangju Island. Oh. Greet shrugged indifferently. He could probably understand what the elf was thinking. Anyway, the lifespan gap would be left here, and when the partner passed away, the children would be able to stand on their own feet, and then return to Evermeet Island. Of course, sometimes if the operation is improper, there will be cases like little Gretel or Ms. Jasmine. Then, whose children encounter it, it will be bad luck for their children. As for Gretel, your mother didn't come to you, nor did she send anyone to come to you. Maybe she had to face difficulties. Maybe you know her name. I can help you ask what Yangju Island is. What's the situation? Gretel was silent. He looked across from the well of eternity, his eyes penetrating through the forest, over the waves, and towards the distant old continent. I turned to the place where my father and mother met, fell in love, and eloped hand in hand. I turned to the kingdom of Kent, the small town where I spent my first 16 years. After a long time, he whispered. My mother's name? My mother, the mother of this body, she never mentioned my name on the Isle of Evermeet. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @bookfriend 201707132217166627 for the reward of 100 starting coins. I ate melon this morning until I was flying. I will work hard on 4,000 words in the afternoon. If my efforts fail, I will update it tomorrow. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1207. So, you don't plan to go to Everlasting Island. After a long period of embarrassment, the elves dispersed and went about their own business. Archmage Baebo suspended his exploration of the elven secret realm and walked beside Gretel. He flicked his fingers lightly, and a stream of colorful light surrounded the two of them, perfectly preventing any detection. After setting up the iridescent barrier, His Excellency the Archmage asked softly. That's it? Are you going to turn back after walking through the southern continent? There was deep worry and disapproval between the Archmage's brows. As the oldest and highest-ranking disciple of the Lord of Thunder, Archmage Baebo has always felt that when the teacher is away, he is responsible for the development direction of his junior disciple, and cannot allow him to go astray. What is a crooked path? With such a big elf island here, if you don't go around, see something, and understand the ancient and glorious civilization of the elf, it's obviously the wrong way to go. Little Gretel, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to hold grudges, and it's okay to hold grudges. We can't live with our own development. Before reaching level 15 and the world of meditation has not yet fully materialized, walking more, seeing more, and seeing more different worlds is an important step for a magician to lay a solid foundation and make himself move more steadily and further. Greed hesitated to speak. He turned to look at the sky in the distance. A flock of birds pierced the sky and flew to the west. Swifts, albatross, ravens, peregrine falcons, a group of birds that live in different areas, have different habits, are at different positions in the food chain, and will not survive in the center of the secret realm at all, flutter their wings from one place and fly to a unified place. Direction. Now that I think about it, have you sent a message to Yangju Island? Looking at the scale of these birds flying, several legends and other spellcasters, a large group of people wrote letters back. I actually don't really expect my mother to love me again. He shrugged lightly and looked at his senior brother. But I hate being kidnapped. The kind of people who come up and say that you have our blood, that you are one of our own, what are you doing, and so on, don't want to hear it. What, have you come down from the mountain to pick peaches? Archmage Baebo did not know the rich background behind the sentence go down the mountain to pick peaches. However, this did not prevent him from accurately understanding the meaning of Greet's words. The Archmage laughed, raised his generous palm, and patted Gretel heavily on the shoulder. Okay, I understand. To put it simply, firstly, Don't try to get any benefits from this, and secondly, you can let me go, but do I need to pay more? Gretel moved his shoulders uncomfortably. Archmage Baebo did not let go of his hand, but pressed him hard. Okay, it's okay. Do what you should do, and study whatever you want. If you want benefits, compensation, etc., I'll talk about it. By the way, don't go mining. Keep this job for me, come. Brother. Don't send me away in a hurry. Well, no matter what, wait until I finish a round of research, get some results, and successfully advance. Archmage Baebo choked, looking up and down at Gretel as if he didn't know him. After doing research, producing results, and advancing. My child, you are at level 12. It's not level 2. Do you know how long the average council time is to upgrade from level 12 to level 13? To put it to you, it's like bending down to pick a fruit. Do you want to be stuck here for 20 or 30 years and let these elven legends wait for you here for 20 or 30 years? Greet looked at him with an innocent and expectant face. Archmage Baebo suddenly became discouraged and let out a long sigh. It seems that since this kid came to Nevis, he has been in level 1 in 1 year and level 3 in 2 years, but he has never been stuck anywhere. Whether it's running to the great wilderness, running to the New World, or running to the rainforest of the southern continent. He always finds a way to soar upwards. No, I had just advanced to level 9 when I left Nevis, and now I have jumped to level 13, such a rich gift from the world. If it weren't for the fact that the research has not yet produced results, it seems that it will go directly to level 13. Okay, I'll help you negotiate. Well, it's really not good to rush over too quickly. You have to delay it for a while to let things cool down and give you a step to step down. With that said, Archmage Baebo waved away the iridescent barrier, swayed away with his hands behind his back. He held his head high, walked like a duck, and looked high-spirited like please beg me, come and beg me. This time, Gretel actually laughed. He looked at his senior brother's back, then turned to the outside of the barrier, worried about Cyrilla who was looking at him. Don't worry, it's okay. By the way, let's go pick up Bernard and Appa? Keep them outside, they will be worried to death. Walk. The two waved their hands at the same time. A pair of huge silver wings and a pair of golden red wings spread out from their backs. The dragon wing technique was activated, and the two of them flew into the sky, side by side, towards where Bernard and Appa were waiting. In the center of the elf secret realm, several elders looked at each other. They urgently released their personal messenger birds to send messages to Yangju Island, as well as to their friends, acquaintances, and students. After the flight was over, we sat down to discuss this issue. Hey, tell me, how should we resolve little Greet's matter? Elder Masray was the first to sigh. It's not good for such a young and talented child to hate going to Evergem Island. Would it be helpful to find his mother and meet him? What kind of woman would abandon her? Young children. She didn't abandon her child willingly. Elder Melancilla spoke subconsciously, defending the poor mother. Didn't little Gretel say, break up couples and take mothers away from young children? His mother was forcibly taken away by the tribe. If you want to blame her, you can't blame her. With this clue, it will be easy to investigate, Elder Collins said calmly. Is this child in his 20s? How many female elves have been forcibly brought back to Everlasting Island in the past 30 years? I have already written a letter and asked them to ask and search one by one. They can always be found. I'm afraid I can't find it. Elder Melancilla sighed softly. From the old world to the new world, from north to south, over the mountains, and then across the sea. If we don't go at full speed, it will take 1.5 years just to walk. Such a long distance, the danger of wind and waves, the danger of magical beasts, each tribe, each kingdom, each tribal god or demigod. If you're not lucky enough, or if you're not careful, you may end up halfway at any time. It would be better if he was confirmed to be dead. Several elders looked at each other, and they all saw such thoughts in others' eyes, but no one was willing to speak. If Gretel's mother was confirmed to be dead, then she didn't abandon her young son, and Gretel probably wouldn't be so resentful. Just cry and pay homage and you can feel relieved. Of course, it's never a good thing to expect something to happen to others. After a moment of silence, Elder Fahim sighed softly. It's good to be able to find it. If you can't find it or something happens, don't worry too much. I've been with little Greet for several months, and he still has a good heart. He doesn't have to join us. Just be friends. So what do we do? Elder Masray frowned slightly. All around, the young elves lowered their voices and held their breath, trying to eavesdrop. Especially Udian, with those two pointed long ears, the tips of the ears are almost touching his head. Not much, Elder Fahim said slowly. If he wants to research, let him do it. Provide him with a place and research conditions. Young man, give him some time, and he will slowly recover. Besides he leaned back and looked around at the elders. When you come this time, you won't turn back immediately, right? Such a large secret realm and such a large polluted area must be sorted out slowly and slowly brought back to life, right? Several elders nodded together. In fact, when they brought people here, they were already prepared for long-term work. From negotiating with the Kingdom of the Sun, to mining, transporting ore, to cleaning up the secret realm bit by bit. It's already good to see improvement within half a year. It's not a big deal to spend a year. Like now, being able to complete the work just after landing is an unexpected surprise. Even for the sake of efficiency, if everyone stayed in the secret realm for a year and a half and chatted with little Gretel every day, it would be a net profit. Give him all the resources that were originally used to organize the secret realm, lift the seal, and protect yourself, and you will still make money. At the very least, the work has been completed now, and none of the people brought were injured. No matter what, he is still treating our compatriots, Elder Melansila said with emotion. Where is the person he wants to treat, Ms. Jasmine's father, now? Although I am not as proficient in treatment as you, I can still help. I can even help with his research as long as I can cure people. It's not something you can just do if you want to. Elder Fahim laughed softly. When I helped him before, I learned a lot of things. The little guy can be picky. Besides he raised his arm slightly. Look, my senior brother is here. Archmage Bayabo stopped in the distance and bowed his head to greet the legends. Elder Fahim sat up a little straighter and waved to him with a smile. Come. How's it going? Is the little guy still sad? As he spoke, he pointed with his finger, and a piece of fluffy green grass appeared on the ground, intertwined with each other, and formed a grass mat. Archmage Bayabo nodded to him gratefully, lifted up his robe, and sat down carefully. He kept saying that he didn't mind. Well, that's right, that's what little Greet said. This kind of wording, even if it has been tested for detecting lies, it will pass at any time. Archmage Bayabo thought this way, his eyes full of sorrow and worry, and he could only write the little guy is so stubborn on his face. But when it comes to going to Yangju Island or something, I try every possible means to change the subject. I have tried to persuade him again and again. At this stage, he has to walk around no matter what, but if he doesn't want to go, don't force him, Elder Fahim said slowly. Young man, the more you push me, the more you will work against me. No matter what he thinks, Yangju Island has always opened the door to him. He can go anytime he wants. A cunning old man. Archmage Bayabo muttered silently. Listening to the elder's words, it was obvious that he already knew where Gretel's pain points were and had no intention of hitting them head on. Or, plan to let time be the best medicine. His current idea is to do some research here first. Until the research results are obtained and the advancement is successful, he will not consider where to go for the time being. It's difficult. Archmage Baebo let out a long sigh. He turned his head and looked to the southwest from a distance. In his understanding, it was roughly the direction where Elder Fahim's ancient tree took root. His expression was sincere, sympathetic, and worried. As a legendary healer, you have not been able to cure the injured elf in the secret realm for so many years. Little Greet is only level 12. He needs strength but not strength, knowledge but not knowledge, and he has not even learned all the spells. At this point, he pursed his lips into a tight line, shook his head repeatedly, and looked like I'm not optimistic at all. I just can't persuade you. Pause, sigh, pause again, sigh again. Elder Fahim also sighed. Next to her, Elder Melansala touched the wreath on her wrist and leaned forward. Don't worry. There are so many of us here. We need manpower and supplies. Whatever little Gretel wants to study, whether it's building a research institute or magic equipment, we will help dash. Whatever spell he wants to learn, whether it's a healing spell or not, we will teach him. Elder Carrion spoke calmly. All in all, little Greed has done so many things for us, which is equivalent to saving the entire secret realm. We will give him some knowledge and supplies whenever he needs it. It sounds like a very generous quota. I hope it can be fulfilled. Archmage Baebo breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. It's a pity that Gretel is a young mage at level 12, and he is more healing oriented, so he can learn limited spells. As for the materials taken away from the elves, given Gretel's character, they would probably be used to build a research institute on the spot. After the construction is completed, it is difficult to say how many will be packed away. And how much of the knowledge and spells Gretel learned can be brought to the council and taught to the magicians of the council. Archmage Baebo made an estimate, and based on Gretel's character and the elves' habits, the result was not optimistic. Then, I'll stay here and stay with him for a while, and wait until his research gets on track. He nodded calmly. Without waiting for the elf legends to express their approval or disapproval, they smiled bitterly. After all, those things that little Gretel wants to tinker with, those rays and so on, are being done in Nevis by several legendary teams. Here, without my help, with Gretel's strength, many experiments may have failed. There's nothing you can do. The elf legends looked at each other and acquiesced to this request. Gretel did not push the envelope and did not build a laboratory in the center of the elf secret realm. Instead, he expanded a bunker in the contaminated area and close to the secret realm. Going in, if you walk a few more steps, you can reach the location of the mineral vein. Going out, if APA runs wildly for 2 hours, he will be able to escape from the contaminated area and reach Elder Fahim's forward outpost. However, a laboratory is not difficult to build, and a bunker is not difficult to build either. Experimental instruments are too difficult. The first list Greed issued and the various instruments on it made several legends frown at the same time. What? A very, very fine gold foil, 5/1000ths of a millimeter thick. What? Want a vacuum chamber that draws an absolute vacuum. What? Want to observe the particles in the ore and the paths that hit the gold foil. What? Do you want a microscope that can be used to see things in reality? What? 1,000 bottles with 100 flies in each bottle. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. The extra updates are finally finished. Tomorrow I can return to a life of 4,000 words a day. Happiness. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1208. Gold foil, vacuum chambers, observation instruments, etc. Gretel actually asked for them for Archmage Baebo. The eldest brother is at the critical point of advancing to the legend, and he cannot miss a step. In order to accompany him, I delayed half a year of research. This is too painful. Therefore, Greet used public services for his own benefit and added these experimental instruments related to observing atomic nuclei to the list. It's not very expensive either, like gold foil or something. Senior brother just made a fortune, there's a lot of gold. As for himself, all he wanted was flies, flies, flies and flies. Led by Udian and Ashmoonsong, a dozen elves ran in the surrounding forest for 7 or 8 days before they tremblingly picked up a pile of burdens and returned with thousands of bottles. Well, Gretel, this is the fly you want. Oh my god, things like flies are really disgusting. Either in the garbage dump, in the toilet, or next to the dead animals, or live animals that are bitten, bleeding, and injured. Elves, as long as there is no elf, there is no one who doesn't like to be clean. In order to find all these flies, they pinched their noses and walked wherever they were dirty or smelly, but they would die. If it weren't for the elves living nearby, either himself or his friends, or an acquaintance or a familiar monster, who had received Gretel's treatment, who would be willing to suffer such a heavy punishment. Greet also had an earthy complexion. There was a pile of rotten meat, feces, etc. underneath each of these 1,000 bottles, and there were hundreds of flies buzzing inside. In order to maintain ventilation, the bottle mouth cannot be sealed and can only be covered with a layer of gauze. The scent from 1,000 bottles comes out of the gauze, and the effect is. Gretel cast a bubble spell on himself with his backhand. Looking at the elves again, all of them were wearing bubble spells and cleansing spells to protect their bodies, and they still looked gloomy. Everyone looked like they had been ravaged 100 times. Gretel forced a smile, nodded gratefully to them, and looked at the bottles again. Taking a closer look, I felt even more dizzy. Big ones, small ones, gray ones, black ones, green ones. Red eyes, black eyes, brown eyes. At a glance, in short, there are at least 20 or 30 kinds. He asked weakly, have you separated these flies one by one? Do we still want to separate different species? Who cares what species of flies there are? That's right, who would study flies? Such smelly, dirty things. Thousands of bottles of flies. How do you divide them, open them all, and guide them into groups? Do you tell them, you guys should discuss with each other, and fly the same kind together? Who is going to communicate with flies? I don't want to, just thinking about it makes me feel so dirty and smelly, vomit. Gretel, T. Okay, you guys, please stop bullying little Gretel, look at him almost crying. At the critical moment, it was Ashuedge who stood up, waving his arms and sending away his companions who had brought the flies along. Then, he turned to Gretel and sighed longly. Forget it, just tell me how to group them into groups, and I will find a way to help you. Don't help him. A deep voice suddenly sounded at the entrance of the laboratory, or the experimental area. Archmage Baebo strode over. As expected, he also had a bubble spell covering his head and a cleaning spell protecting his body. He glanced at the fly bottle at the door and frowned, looking very dissatisfied. You don't even know a fly anymore. Ah, why should I know? Plague. Archmage Baebo wanted to complain about Lord of Plague. He glanced at Ashu Isong and thought that he was a magician of the plasticity system after all, so he reluctantly endured the title. Didn't you snatch part of the Plague Girl's inheritance? There's nothing about flies in it. Use your brain and think about it. Move it around. Don't wait for others to do everything for you. Gretel, T. If possible, I really don't want to mobilize those inheritances, it's dirty and smelly, just in my head, larvae are swarming, flies are flying everywhere, spreading diseases and so on. He sighed deeply, sat down with his oak staff in his arms, and began to meditate. The little snake poked its head out from the oak stick, its tail wrapped around the stick, Its long snake body stretched forward, and put its head between Greet's eyebrows. Hey, when I swallowed the inheritance of that plague girl, I swallowed a big portion. The biggest portion. Greet meditated seriously. In my memory, the dirty black veil and the Dementor-like figure, the flies are its skirt, the mosquitoes are its streamers, and the miasma is its makeup. All kinds of flies follow it, constantly flying, constantly breeding, constantly updating and iterating, constantly. All kinds of diseases are spread. How did Plague Girl choose them? Order them? Enhance them? And how to speed up their reproduction and make them carry various germs? No, the last one, you don't need to learn it for the time being. Greet silently sorted through his memories. Some of the memories passed down from the Plague Girl were very useful, some were not so useful, and some ideas were very different from his own. However, no matter what, these knowledge, methods and techniques can still help a lot. The bottle can be opened, he whispered softly, as if dreaming, and raised the oak staff. Archmage Baebo and Ashu Isong looked at each other and stretched out their hands helplessly. The grass blades rustled and the wind blew, lifting the gauze on the bottle mouth one by one, letting the flies inside rise into the sky. Then, a small group of gray-green breath gently covered the large pile of glass bottles. Come on, be obedient, line up your lines according to your species, and go into different bottles. As for your larvae, we'll talk about it after they hatch. Greet ordered softly. In terms of its nature, the power inherited from the Plague Girl, or stolen from it, is of a higher level than the level 12 nature priest's ability to communicate with animals, and the effect is immediate. And those flies, according to Gretel's order, split into black clouds one after another, dispersed and dropped into different glass bottles. Greet breathed a sigh of relief and looked at them one by one. Size, body color, shape, pattern. This is not, this is not, this is not, this is not. What exactly do you want, fly? Ashu Isong stood far away, full of doubts. Gretel turned his head and gave her a smile that was uglier than crying. I heard the biology student next door complain that there are more than 10,000 known species of flies in the world, and more than 1,600 species have been recorded in China. So, how did senior scientists accurately identify fruit flies from among these numerous fly species? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1209. Chapter 1206. Gretel. White-eyed Holy King Nordmark arrives. Gretel actually knew what flies he wanted. To be precise, he knew very clearly that he wanted fruit flies, yes, the kind of fruit flies that mostly have red eyes and occasionally white eyes, the enlightenment of the white-eyed Holy King Morgan. In other words, if the white-eyed fruit fly had not successfully transferred its genes to a certain red-eyed fruit fly at the last moment of its life, human history might have changed as a result. As for Morgan, it is estimated that he will not be able to rise to the level of the Holy King with white eyes. Instead, he will end his life as a nagging old man with a reputation for stealing milk bottles. However, Gretel could not say to the elves, "Go and help me find the kind that has 3 pairs of autosomes and 1 pair of sex chromosomes. Most have red eyes, some have white eyes, some have small wings, and some have long wings. The fruit flies are coming." In fact, he once asked the elves if they had ever heard of fruit flies. However, after the words he named in human language were translated into magical common language, and then translated into elvish language through the art of tongues, the elves he questioned all showed blank eyes without exception. Ahem, this road is blocked. Maybe there are fruit flies in this world, but this animal, which is selected as a common experimental material by modern genetics, must not be called this name in this world. Well, considering that borax is called moonlight sand by the elves, this result is not too surprising. So Greet could only find it on his own. This kind of fly is too big, so it won't fly. The second type has black eyes, so it won't fly. The third kind has a strong metallic luster on its body, so it won't fly. It seems like there's nothing I want. So what fly do you want? AI-11UGE held her nose and asked him patiently. 1,000 bottles, more than 100,000 flies. Everyone climbed up and down, dug through garbage piles and dug pits for so long, only for this kid to say I didn't ask for it? I'll break your skull. Well, I want a very small fly. Greet also felt that he was going a little too far. But there was no way. Without certainty that he could find fruit flies, or even that there were fruit flies in the world, he could only cast a wide net, catch more fish, and use a lot of manpower to find experimental animals. At any rate, it is easier to find flies than to search among countless insects, or even to target a certain experimental animal among countless animals, isn't it? He broke off his fingers one by one. First of all, it must be very small. Such a bottle can easily hold 1 or 200. Secondly, it must reproduce very quickly. It is best to reproduce one generation in 7 or 8 days, and at most 10 days, half a month. A little slow. AI-11UGE's energetic face immediately distorted. Small flies are easy to find, but flies that reproduce very quickly are hard to find. Who can study flies when they are full? Although elves communicate with nature, study nature, and protect nature, and insects are also within the scope of their research, most of the objects they study and communicate with are beneficial insects such as bees and butterflies. Some elves will expand their research subjects to praying mantises and ants, which are insects with very distinctive features or special abilities. But, flies? No way. How do you know this? Little Gretel, tell me, are you taking revenge on me? Ouch, Sister Uge, let go. In the end, it was Elder Fahim who saved Gretel. The elder looked at it with a smile for a while, waved, called Ashuej aside, and walked towards the pile of flies. Flies. They are wonderful little creatures. Although they look dirty and smelly, they play an irreplaceable role in the decay and decomposition process of nature. The old man walked slowly to the fly bottle, bent down, and observed the flies one by one. Soon, a long list of numbers came out from his mouth fluently. This takes 7 to 14 days from egg to adult, and can start to reproduce in 1 to 2 days after adulthood. This takes 19 days. This depends on the temperature. It takes 15 days on Yangju Island but only 13 days in the fertile forest. This kind of... Greet tried hard to record. To his right, Ashuej's gaze has become more and more admiring. He has even studied flies. Should he be called a legendary elder? In other words, it is precisely because he studies even dirty things like flies without hesitation that Elder Fahim became a legend. Ashuej shuddered and shook her head vigorously. Even if she knew this method, she would not study it. Anyway, she is taking the warrior route anyway. Well, these are the only types of flies I know. After reading it once, Elder Fahim straightened up and shook his head at Gretel. However, it is not difficult to know the situation of other flies. As long as you raise them for a period of time, or in other words, a complete cycle from eggs to adults, you can know this information, right? Greet's face immediately twitched. The truth is that this is correct. However, let him raise these flies for a complete cycle, and he may have to raise them for more cycles in the future. He wants an apprentice. He wants subordinates. He wants a lot of spellcasters who can help him, including conjuration, transmutation, and necromancy. He doesn't choose. Is there any way to establish the great institute of biogenetics here? There was no reason for him, the subject leader and the head of the institute, to do such a menial job as raising flies himself. He turned to Elder Fahim for help. The elder pondered for a moment and looked around. He saw that all the elves around him had basically run away. Even Ashu Isang was walking back in small steps. As for Miss Sarara, she had been standing firmly by Gretel's side before, but now she is about to retreat back to the entrance of the institute. Ahem, little Gretel, the elder thought for a moment and smiled gently at Gretel. We all know that the purpose of your research is to cure Ms. Jasmine's father, and other compatriots who have been irreversibly damaged by the well of eternity. However, raising flies seems a little far away from this goal. He pondered, choosing his words carefully, and said slowly. If you can explain clearly why you want to raise flies, or what is your research path, maybe I can find a few people to help you work. Gretel was confused. From chromosomes, to sex-linked inheritance, to genes, to gene collapse, there is a long way to go, and he has no certainty at all. Since you are not sure, how should you explain it? Well, I suddenly remembered that the fly I'm looking for should meet one more condition: it's easier to raise. For example, it doesn't eat rotten meat or dirty things, and it eats fruits. You should have told me earlier. Elder Fahim, Ashu Isang, and several elves who popped up around him all spoke in unison. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1210. Observe the division process of E. coli after staining. The E. coli is dead. Could it be that I poured too much dye? Restaining, very good, this time the E. coli is alive and dividing, but it is not stained clearly and cannot be seen clearly. Dye it again. Greet stumbled and struggled under the microscope day after day, day after day. From E. coli to onion root tips, from onion root tips to frog eggs. After proving the role of the cell nucleus, proving the existence of chromosomes, and proving that chromosomes have a parallel relationship with genes, hey, the growth-promoting technique is so useful, and the cleaning technique is so useful in peeling frog eggs. Finally, it is time to prove that chromosomes are gene carriers. It's time. Well, so I need a fruit fly with white eyes. Gretel held his chin up and looked at the bottles of fruit flies that the elves had found, confused and in a daze. After he said that he likes to eat fruits, the elves quickly found a group of fruit flies for him, but these little things all had red eyes. Red eyes, red eyes, red eyes, red eyes. Gretel, do you want to go take a nap? Ashu Edge floated past him and looked at his thick dark circles with concern. Your eyes are all red. Red, I don't want red eyes, I want white eyes. Greet replied dreamily. In fact, fruit flies have many other traits, such as long wings, small wings, and bristles on their legs. But Gretel couldn't remember whether wings are sex-linked inheritance. It was too painful to look at fly leg hairs with a magnifying glass. It would be better to have white eyes to make the researchers happy. Greet, what's wrong with you? Greet shook his head vigorously, raised his hand, and snapped his fingers. The water-generating technique was activated, and a cloud of water poured down on his head, drenching him thoroughly. He blinked his eyes, shook his hair, and finally felt a little more awake. I have an idea. He jumped up, grabbed a small bottle of fruit flies, his fingertips flashed slightly, and threw a paralysis spell over it. The fruit flies in the bottle fell to pieces. Greet poured the paralyzed, anesthetized, fruit flies out of the bottle. He held the remaining fly eggs and larvae in the bottle and began to mutter. Give me white eyes, give me white eyes, give me white eyes. While chanting, he extended his mental power and tried to cover every fruit fly egg and larvae. The natural force in the palm rotates, hazy, trying to convey to these little guys, conveying his will. Hey, give me some face, can your red eyes grow into white eyes? The light green natural force is thrown into the bottle, as if it is thrown into a bottomless pit, and is completely absorbed by the fruit fly eggs and larvae. Soon, the fly eggs begin to hatch, and the larvae begin to mold, grow, mold again, and pupate. The walls of the pupa tear, and the emerging adults spread their wings and fly out. The whole process is like a fast-moving camera, a change occurs in a blink of an eye, and a change occurs in a blink of an eye. As for the white eyes, well, the little guys don't give you face. Greet smiled helplessly, changed the bottle, and prepared to continue the experiment. Ashuedge watched the whole process and quickly interrupted. Gretel, are you going to make them grow white eyes? Then don't change the bottle and continue to induce birth. 1 round is not enough for 2 rounds, 2 rounds is not enough for 3 rounds, it can always be done. If you change a batch now, it is equivalent to starting from scratch, I don't recognize you. Is there any other trick? Greet has not done much work to promote the direction. At this time, it is natural to absorb the advanced experience of his predecessors. He held the bottle and patiently waited. Hey, why are there no new fruit flies coming out? The eggs and larvae have been given birth to for you, so of course there are no new ones. Then Gretel wanted to say why don't you mate, and after taking a look at Ashmoon's song, he felt that he still had to pay attention to his words in front of young single women. After a pause, his tongue twisted. Why don't you lay eggs? Maybe he was just born and is a little confused. Aizwij took a look, raised his finger, and tapped the wall of the glass bottle with his fingertips. A misty cyclone passed by, and soon I saw the fruit flies buzzing and getting together in pairs. Sister, your skills are much better than those necromancers who are busy flipping through the pink book. Gretel was impressed. Ashuedge raised her chin, her face full of pride. See? Learn more, we forest guards, this little magic to help animals is very useful. Yes, I just don't know, elf forester, why do you throw birthing spells at animals when you have nothing to do? Greet nodded like a mince, watching the fruit flies fly down one by one to lay their eggs, then paralyze and transfer them. Holding a new batch of fly eggs, continue to communicate, continue to provide the power of nature, continue to stimulate birth. Repeatedly, a group of white-eyed fruit flies were finally born. Greet felt like a treasure, and transferred them one by one into a bottle, waiting for them to mature and mate naturally. Then, after mating, this batch of eggs was laid, and the new fruit flies that hatched. The eyes are red again. The traits are unstable, the mutations cannot be inherited, or are they just causing the eyes to fade in color during growth? All in all, we must continue to work hard to provide the power of nature, continue to revise, and spread our hands. Gretel took a deep breath and exhaled deeply. Catch this new batch of fruit flies and cast a spell to make them mate and lay eggs. In this process, we begin to continuously supply the forces of nature and constantly communicate with them. Give me a child with white eyes, a child with white eyes, a child who can pass on white eyes from generation to generation. After a few more generations, the blind cat encountered a dead mouse, and finally produced a fruit fly with white eyes, and it was successfully inherited to the second generation. Greet was overjoyed and watched them pass on for 2 generations. Finally, he took these fruit flies and mated them with red-eyed fruit flies. Red, white, ouch. The numbers are wrong. The gene induced by this spell is not invisible. Crying, these fruit flies were placed aside and allowed to grow on their own. Take another bottle of Drosophila larvae and start the induction again. Give me children with faded eyes, children with faded eyes, children with faded eyes from generation to generation. Alas, Morgan, the holy king of white eyes, had some great luck to get a fruit fly that happened to have white eyes, the invisible factor, and sex-linked inheritance. Okay, this time, the number of white eyes and red eyes of the newly hatched fruit fly is finally correct. Let's start observing its chromosomes, and take out the salivary glands of the larvae. Even so, Greet also knew that with the help of magic, his research was on the fast track. First of all, targeted mutagenesis is possible, so there is no need to wait for luck to fall from the sky. Secondly, you can use magic to induce birth, instead of breeding one generation, waiting for 7 or 8 days, and worrying about not being able to feed the fruit flies. Finally, you can use magic to induce fruit flies to mate, so you don't have to worry about the white-eyed fruit fly dying in the middle before it accomplishes its mission. Of course, the convenience of spells can also be reflected in other aspects. Cleansing. Remove the fat from your salivary glands. Ah, it's a little crooked, half of the salivary glands are gone. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. The author continues to study high school biology. It feels like the few lines in the book are the years of hard work of mankind's top scientists in history. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1211. What has little Gretel been doing lately? I don't know, I just know that he is messing with flies. Fruit flies. Those are fruit flies. Elder Melancilla shook her head helplessly and sighed. After they broke up unhappy that day, they didn't have the nerve to look for Gretel again, so they could only write letters back to Evermeet Island while asking the young elves to pay attention to Gretel's movements. The problem is that none of these young elves can figure out what Gretel is doing. All I know is that he is buried in that stone fortress, which he calls the Research Institute, all day long, without even seeing the sun. No one can play with the petri dishes, microscopes, slides, cover slips, dyes, etc. that Greet tinkered with. So, has he been disappointed in us recently? That's not true, maybe he's just busy. Elder Fahim had personally experienced Greet's previous research process. The last time he plunged into the research room, he was just like this time, working day and night to tinker with things that others couldn't see. Things you know. Recently, he asked me for some past medical records to read, as well as records of people who have passed away. It seems that he has not given up on the treatment. Well. The elven elders looked at each other. The first was to lament Gretel's stubbornness. Several legendary mages had failed to cure the patient, so he rushed in with all his heart. God knows how long he would have to delay on this subject, and how many years of advancement would be delayed for this. The second is to sigh, a child with such a pure and kind heart is still separated from the elves after all. It's a pity, it's a pity. If I had known that he had such a talent, wouldn't it be better to bring the child back when his mother returned? Even if the child's father is brought back with him, it's not impossible. People with talent and strength are privileged no matter what. Who is his mother? Have you found out? Elder Fahim asked. Elder Carrion shook his head and sighed helplessly. You also know the situation on Yangju Island. On such two large islands, everyone lives here and there, finding a place to live where they like. Except for a few places such as Wangting and the Academy, most compatriots live in their own places. Yes, you have to rely on messengers to go and ask. Several elven elders were helpless. Elves have a long lifespan and are naturally friendly. As long as they are not too stupid or too lazy, everyone can live a good life. There are indeed many elves who are willing to temper themselves, study various spells in the academy, take on the responsibility of protecting the group, or travel across the ocean to travel. However, there are also many elves who find themselves on a hilltop or in a forest and don't want to come out. Among these elves, will there be a mutant who is willing to travel and be captured by his family after a long time? This is. Moreover, Wang Ting has already responded. In recent decades, no royal elves have been captured. There are secret realms and big rifts. The seals cannot be opened easily. If you want to know any news, you have to wait for their rotation. I hope the news will come back soon. Alas, I always feel that if the little guy has such a talent, his mother must not be an ordinary elf. They sighed for a while, rolled up their sleeves, and started working. Clean rivers, organize lakes, sow plant seeds, cast spells to promote growth, attract animals. The huge elven secret realm, as well as the polluted area outside the secret realm, which is at least 100 kilometers wide, with dozens of elves sprinkled in, is like a few small sesame seeds sprinkled on a pot helmet with a diameter of 1 meter. If everyone doesn't live together, eat, live and move together, and work within this range, basically you won't be heard even if you shout at the top of your lungs. No matter how much you worry about greed, you have to finish your work well. Every day, only for a short while after planting trees, tidying up nature, and feeling half dead from exhaustion, can I feel like caring about. How far has little Gretel's research progressed? Greet's work of raising flies, no, raising fruit flies, has slowed down a lot after all. Fruit flies can reproduce once in 7 or 8 days even if they are left alone. With the help of magic, they can reproduce once in 10 minutes. Even if the white-eyed fruit fly you get for the first time is not a recessive gene or a sex-linked inheritance, if you want to get the traits you want, you can only use the power of nature to spawn 70 or 80 rounds. It only took Greet 2 days to spawn the fruit flies he wanted, and another day to make cross-matching offspring. 1 generation of parents, 2 generations of children, look at the ratio. Then use the recessive homozygotes and the offspring heterozygotes to make a group, and then use the heterozygotes in the offspring to self-cross to make a group, and then look at the proportion. Among them, divine magic creates a generation once it is activated, and another generation is activated once it is activated. What takes the most time is actually counting the number of fruit flies and identifying the males and females. Okay, it finally begins. Gretel is gearing up. The results of cross gametes verified that the gene was on the chromosome and that the gene controlling white eyes was on the X chromosome. Next, we need to go one step further to verify the possibility of chromosome collapse causing animal body collapse. Senior brother Burbo, Gretel dove into the bunker next door. On the doorway of the bunker, painted in bright yellow and pure black, is a clover with a black stamen in the center, a sign of radioactive dangerous goods, Greet's bad taste. He stood in the entrance hall, pressed the sound transmission device, and shouted. Give me some of that ore. Give me some of it, purified or not. What are you going to do again? After shouting twice, the vague voice of Archmage Baebo came from the sound transmission device. Little Greet, I'm warning you, this thing is very dangerous. Research is research, don't get yourself involved. No problem. Senior brother, don't worry. Archmage Baebo handed over 2 small lead boxes after 1,000 warnings and instructions. The 1.5-inch thick box wall was tightly buckled. Greet took it in his hands and lowered his arms at the same time. He placed 2 different ores in 2 compartments. A circle of concentric circles was drawn around it, and 12 equal parts were drawn according to the clock. In each grid, a test tube of fat and fat-thirden star fruit fly larvae was placed. Calculate the time. In the first hour, take out a batch of larvae and take a small section of salivary gland cells for observation. Incision. Incision. Damn it, my hands are shaking again, and the larvae are crushed to death again. Ah, this one finally succeeded. I got out a small section of salivary gland cells, a little less salivary gland. This thing won't die, the cells are stained, and under the microscope, you can see black and white strips. Hell, all the larvae live to emerge as adults. How much ore do I need to add to burn them until their genes collapse? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1212. Greet concentrated all his energy on research. Well, paralysis dash. As my mind moved slightly, a subtle brilliance flashed by, and a third star fruit fly larvae that had been squirming lively just a moment ago was slapped onto the glass slide with its belly stretched out. Microscopy. The light and shadow changed before my eyes. The magical microscope array moved over, the lens zoomed in and out, and the focus was adjusted. Finally, a fruit fly larva magnified 5 times appeared in the center of the lens field of view. Hand of the mage transformation. The translucent mage's hand condensed and deformed, turning into 2 microscopic probes as thin as a hair. The surface was pure black, announcing its existence on a background that was close to pure white. The microscopic probe gently teased the salivary glands of the fruit fly larvae away from the body. Then, the tip of the probe becomes a sharp edge, and it is gently cut downward to cut off a small section of the long salivary gland. Treatment, recovery. White light like debris flashed. The salivary glands that were cut off quietly healed. Okay, let it continue to grow. Let's do the dying work here, Sarah, do you see clearly? If there is no problem, help me get 20 larvae. Okay. Miss Yinlong happily rolled up her sleeves and started to take action. Fruit flies that grow up eating fruit are not something she hates. The fruit fly larvae swarming in the fruit bottles are even cute. Soon, from the experimental platform on the other side, Cyrilla's shouts came from. Oops. The bug is dead. Died. Died again. Why are the mage's hands so thick? T. My hands are not shaking, how come the bugs were crushed? Gretel could only offer her deepest sympathy. Microscopic medicine may seem simple, but in fact it is the most demanding of operations. This is why Shinwai is at the top of the contempt chain. Shake your hand a little and move your finger 0.1 mm at the end of the operation, it will be enlarged to more than 1 mm. The error tolerance rate of this operation is calculated in 0.1 mm. To do this business, you must have hands as steady as a rock and a heart as calm as ice and snow. Sarah's operation still needs to be refined for the time being. It would be too complicated for Greet to deal with so many larvae alone. Gretel looked around and focused on Ashu Isong, who came over to help. Sister Uge, come here and see if you can cast microscopy. I can do this, but dash. What about the hands of the mage? Make the finest and finest microneedles, the same thickness and color as the ones I released. Ashu Edge rubbed with a frown on her face. It came out after rubbing it, but if you want to hold it in your hands and work under a microscope, that's another matter. The mind is restless, the hands are trembling, the salivary glands are not separated properly, and the larvae are killed. It is bearable to kill one, but 10 of them are killed in a row, even if they are fruit flies, even if they are kept in a bottle. Nature practitioners feel that my mentality was a little shaken. Ah, Sister Uge, you don't have to do it yourself. Gretel smiled sweetly. He waved and called Wunkin, who had been standing next to him. Come on, pick up the microneedle and be responsible for the operation, you know the steps, right? You've been watching it for so long. Aonyejin clicked his upper and lower jaws, stretched out his 2 bony hands, and took the microscopic probe condensed in the mage's hands. Sit under the microscope and start operating in a serious manner. Ashu Isong sat opposite him and suddenly found that she had nothing to do. She only needed to adjust the microscope lens and throw paralysis and healing spells. Gretel, you can even crush a skeleton. What if? Hundreds and thousands of larvae, all made by myself, Greet said confidently. After replying, he turned to look at the oak staff beside him. Hey, can you help cast the spell? Or, can you separate two branches and trunks and help operate them? Hey. Don't hit people if you don't want to work. Ashuej was silent. Sarah, on the other hand, after killing dozens of larvae in a row, came over to complain in a depressed manner, and saw Onigen's work at a glance. What? My efficiency is not as good as that of a skeleton? This is impossible. Cyrilla is a noble, beautiful, and lovely silver dragon. It is equivalent to a human level 16 or 17 spellcaster. It doesn't matter if she can't beat the legend. In this low-end job that even a skeleton can do, she will never allow herself to be compared with a skeleton. The silver dragon girl geared up, turned back to her console, and continued to train herself. Well, your hands should be steady, your mind should be calm, your concentration and breath should be held, and your movements should be light. Wait, what are you saying over there? Bernard, don't be anxious, take your time, don't compete with Onigen. What? Does this mean that if I don't work hard, I can't even compare to Bernard? With the hard work of Sarah, Bernard, and Onigen, Greet can finally save time on low-end operations and concentrate on staining and observing those cells. He concentrated his mind, adjusted the lens of the magic microscope, and slowly increased the magnification. Soon, a ball of thread that had been scratched by a cat appeared in front of Greet. Well, some are deep, some are shallow, some are wide, some are narrow. Greet frowned, trying to identify these strips. It would be great if we could distinguish them and record them one by one, but... However, the human brain obviously has its limits. It is said that there are more than 5,000 horizontal stripes in the Drosophila chromosome. Observation and comparison far exceed the limits of human vision and memory. Unless there is any cheat device that can help. Meditation core preparation. Connecting vision. Scanning. Record. Gretel pressed his eyebrows and said softly. Humans in previous lives had micrographs, which allowed them to take pictures of these chromosomes, enlarge them, and slowly record them. However, as for Gretel, films with sufficient resolution have not yet been produced. Fortunately, he can use magic to get around it. Test item number 1, record. Test item number 2, record. Test item number 3, record. Thanks to the human brain, thanks to the biological computer that magically simulates it, the storage capacity is almost endless. After studying thousands of bugs, Gretel finally confirmed. Half of the fruit fly larvae placed in the ring closest to the purest ore for 12 hours died. The remaining half had their salivary glands cut open and stained, and their chromosome bands were found to be scattered. Treatment was given to them, and the cut salivary glands could not heal. This can almost prove that when the chromosome strips are scattered and separated, the cells cannot replicate themselves, or there will be a lot of errors in self-replication. Of course, the film scanned out using the core of meditation lacks objectivity and cannot be written into a paper. If you really want to write a paper, you must have some third-party shooting equipment. Senior brother. Senior brother. Lend me the mobile tower spirit. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1213. Little Greet, what are you doing? I also need to move the tower spirit myself. You know, the tower spirit is very important to magicians. Archmage Baebo walked out with the two bosses' black eyes. These days, holding the newly obtained ore, he devoted all his time other than eating, sleeping, and meditating to research. It's nice to have a terrace near the water. It's nice to have enough ore to experiment with. God knows that when they were in Nevis, the ore that Gretel brought back was just a little bit, and most of it fell into the hands of the teacher and the others. It was so sad to be able to share the amount he had. Separate. Purify. Measure their various properties. Measure the rays they emit. Try bombarding gold foil and other objects with these rays and see if the direction of the rays is deflected. The most important thing is to try to use low purity, medium purity, high purity ores, ores mixed with graphite, ores mixed with borax, ores mixed with lead ingots, as casting materials to cast spells. Archmage Baebo has discovered that even if low purity ore is used as a material, the Yanjian explosion is much more powerful than using sunstone or something like that. Moreover, in addition to ultraviolet rays, another newly discovered and more lethal ray can be excited in large quantities using this new low purity ore, doubling its lethality at a discount after discount. During this period of time, while the ore can be burned indefinitely, he will conduct all the experiments he can think of. Oh, senior brother, let me borrow it to record the images and write a paper. Greed pulled his arm and begged him. It's very fast, just 2 days, just borrow 2 days. You know, the images to accompany the thesis must not be drawn by my hand unless it is absolutely necessary. What? 2 days? It takes you 2 days to record an image. Oh, the main thing is to record the complete timeline. Those larvae will last a day just by leaving them there. You just want those larvae to be injured to the point of dying, but not dead, right? Bring them here and I'll cast the spell. A quarter of an hour later, Greed watched helplessly as his senior brother stood behind a 10-centimeter thick lead wall and a 1-meter thick stone wall. Through the projection of the arcane light curtain, he used his mental power to lock the small box in the center of the room. 3, 2, 1. After 3 countdowns, a snowflake burst out from the secret vision screen and disappeared suddenly. Gretel. The cloud chamber is turned on, the counter is turned on, and the radioactive content in the laboratory is recorded. Archmage Baebo's calm and almost cold voice sounded from the side. The reading is very good. 1 minute after the spell is cast, the radioactivity decreases rapidly. Move the feeding bottle to the next door laboratory, open the feeding bottle, and measure the radioactive content in the bottle. Very good, the radioactivity is negligible. Release the fortune-telling technique. The darkness in the meditation field of vision was projected in front of Gretel through the referral of the mobile tower spirit. Archmage Baebo frowned. Have they all been killed? It seems that the power output just now was too high, so let's do it again. This time, lower the mana output. Great. Sure enough, magicians of the plasticity department never disappoint in terms of lethality. Gretel thought silently. Now that the radioactive elements are in their hands, other things have not been researched yet. The radioactive attack has been researched first. Very good, I estimate that in the near future, we can expect teachers and others to explode little boys. I hope teachers and others will try their best to pay attention to safety. In any case, having a senior brother rub the killing spell with his hands greatly speeds up the research. After casting 5 spells in a row, Archmage Baebo obviously found the right rhythm. When a spell was cast, about half of the larvae in the bottle were dead, and the remaining half were dying. Half the fatal dose, perfectly achieved. Big brother, you are great. Greed excitedly held the half-dead fruit fly larvae back to work. Summoning Ashmoonsong, Cyrilla, Bernard, and Onijin, he began to pick out the fruit fly salivary glands. He himself only died and observed. Dying microscopy shows chromosome breakage and disintegration. It won't heal with the healing spell. Chromosome fragmentation. Cannot heal. Shattered. Cannot heal. According to the microscopic examination results, after radioactive attack, the chromosomal bands were fragmented, disintegrated, and scattered. Drosophila larvae were unable to receive treatment. Greet pursed her lips tightly and wrote quickly. On the contrary, the chromosomal bands are clear and the intact larvae can heal smoothly after their salivary glands or other parts are removed and receive treatment. Experimental records are shown in the table below. Larvae number 1-20 are the group with chromosome disintegration, larvae number 21-40 are the group with intact chromosomes. See you in the chromosome picture. Based on the above experimental results, we can guess that the reason why serious injuries caused by radioactive attacks, the inability to heal after treatment, and even the inability of the epidermis to grow is because the radioactivity damaged the chromosomes in the cells. If we want to completely cure these severely injured patients, we must completely repair their chromosomes. Greet stopped writing and let out a long breath. Although he had made some guesses before, he could only confirm that radioactivity really had the effect of damaging cell chromosomes through experimental verification. Then, we can talk about subsequent treatment. Thank you, senior brother. Greet waved a thick stack of papers and the data chip copied from the mobile tower spirit with a bright smile. Next, there are those legendary things. That night, in the center of the elf secret realm, 4 elf legends sat in a circle. Among them, a thick stack of papers was stacked a foot high. So, this is the research you have been doing during this time. Elder Fahim took a picture of the copying technique, then took a copy and started reading. Just after reading the first chapter, I felt a little dizzy, had a headache, felt like vomiting, and my blood pressure rose. You're saying that this kind of research might be helpful in treating Ms. Jasmine's father and other seriously injured patients. It might help a little, but I'm not sure yet. Gretel tried to look confident about his research. Radiation damage has only been done on fruit fly larvae so far, and it has not involved larger animals. I tried hard to see the chromosomes in larger animals, but I couldn't see clearly. So what do you want? Or, get a microscope so that I can see their chromosomes clearly. Gretel opened his mouth without hesitation. Elder Fahim shook his head without thinking. No, I can simulate that thing in the meditation world, but none of them can simulate it perfectly. As for creating it in reality, I don't know how long it will take. Then I have another way. Gretel couldn't make one request, so he immediately changed to a second one. Expose a larger animal to a strong radiation environment and damage it to a degree consistent with the medical records. Then, take a piece of meat from it and use the 8-ring necromancer clone technique to try to clone a brand new body. No one here knows necromancy. No, I still know some basic necromancy. It's just that high level, 2 professional ones won't do. Gretel didn't even blink. There is a level 19 necromancer stationed in the Eagle Kingdom, and he has a good relationship with me. If you agree, I can write a letter asking him to come over. No. Necromancers are not welcome to enter the elven secret realm. Well, the result was already expected. Gretel spread his hands. Then I go to the Eagle country to do research. The 4 elf legends looked at each other. For a moment, Elder Colin said in a deep voice. Apart from this, what other options are there? Which legend can I ask for a favor? Understand these things, and then use healing or limited wishing. Help with treatment and try to see the effect. No problem. Look, even elves have eclectic personalities. You told him to invite the necromancer to come over, but he absolutely refused. Then, you asked him to use the limited wishing technique of the 7th ring, and he agreed. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @bookfriend 20170531042015 for the 100 starting coins reward.